Today's video is something that I'm very excited to film, and actually this is the second time I filmed it. The first time I talked so much that it's gonna be like a 3-hour video, so I've written myself notes this time just to try and keep it right on track. I'm going to talk today about the veterinary industry as a whole, but particularly about being a vet nurse and sort of what I've experienced as a vet nurse. I think vet nursing or the veterinary industry is something that a lot of people would like to know more about. You know, everyone's passionate about animals, everyone loves animals, but they often might not know what the industry is like, or I guess the difference between human medical care and the care that we give animals. So sometimes there's a lot of misconceptions and things like that, or people just want more information about it. And that is something that I'm quite passionate about getting out to people. So I am more than happy to answer questions about this at any time. I am by no means an influencer. I have a very small following, but this is something I get asked about almost on a daily basis, whether it be people asking me advice about their pets, asking, you know, why is veterinary care so expensive, the best insurance, or they're thinking about getting into the industry and what it's like to be a vet nurse, or even just, you know, wanting to know a little bit more information about what goes on behind the scenes with surgeries and things like that as well. So I wanted to sit down today and I guess just discuss some of those questions that I get asked all the time to provide you guys, don't mind my cats in the background, provide you guys with a little bit more information. And yeah, so hopefully you find this interesting, especially if you are thinking about getting into the veterinary industry. Definitely keep watching. Hopefully I'll answer a couple of questions, but just keep in mind that this is very much my experience from the clinics that I've worked at and all that kind of thing as well. So it might be very different for you. Okay, so getting into it, the first thing I'm going to go through is what it's like to be a vet nurse. And I guess a little bit about the role as well. Definitely think there's some misconceptions here. Just judging by the amount of times people have asked me, so when are you going to become a vet? I'm like, never, because I'm a vet nurse and that's a whole job on its own. So I think a lot of people are maybe unsure about what a vet nurse does and that type of thing as well. So I guess I should start with my experience. So as I mentioned before, I have been a vet nurse for over a decade now. So I did a traineeship when I was in year 12 and worked 2 days a week in a clinic. Then the moment I finished high school, I started full-time work in a veterinary clinic. I was at that small clinic for maybe, I think 3 years. And then I moved to a larger veterinary practice for 5 years. And then about 3 years ago, I moved from that clinic into a different role. So I now work for a large veterinary pharmaceutical company. We still have a clinic at our premises, but it's much smaller and we specialize in skin. So it's a little bit different than what I did when I was in clinic. So when I was in clinic, my daily roles, just to give you a bit of an idea of what vet nurses do, I think these days they do a lot more than what they used to. I think they used to sort of just be like a glorified receptionist. Now each veterinary clinic is different, so I'm talking just purely about my experience in the clinic that I worked at. We had separate roles each day and each person had, I guess, a primary role. So when I was initially hired by them, I was a surgical nurse and there was 2 nurses that were on surgery for the day. So one was in charge of running surgery, you know, having a look at the surgical list, triaging sort of, I guess, what was on for the day, directing where the nurses were to go, directing where the vets were to go, what surgeries were to be done, in what order, making sure the pets were admitted in the morning for surgery, they had their drugs prepared, everything was ready to go. And then there was also a second surgery nurse who was basically the assistant for the day. So they were the ones who were going into each of the surgery, they were monitoring the anesthetics with the vet, assisting the vet and working with them. So when I first started, I was the surgical assist. And then obviously as I got more experience, I sort of switched between the surgical assistant and running surgery for the day. So most days, you know, you get in, you admit the patients for the day, you do a health check on them. The vet at that time is checking hospital patients and doing other things. So you do a preliminary check on the pet, you go through the forms with them, go through and give their owner some information about what will happen for the day. Then you admit the pet to surgery, you get their pre-medication and their drugs ready. You write your hospital list for the day, so you put an order of what you're going to do, sort of organising who is going to do what surgery, and then you sort of are in charge of running surgery for the day, so making sure things are on time, making sure paperwork is done, histories are written, patients are waking up correctly, you know, they're getting their pain relief and all that kind of thing, as well as having everything ready for them to go home with that afternoon for their discharge information. If you're the surgical assist, you are going in on each of the surgeries, you're assisting the vet with them, so that's monitoring the anaesthetics, that's giving them drugs throughout the surgeries, watching them wake up, all of that kind of thing as well. So it is very hands-on, or at least my experience was very hands-on. We did a lot ourselves. You know, we put catheters in, we take blood, we intubate patients, we do minor procedures like dentals. I'm trying to think what else. Mainly dentals. Mainly procedures that we do as dentals. We assist with x-rays, we assist with ultrasounds. Sometimes we even scrub into surgeries. Because of my strength and also my height, I quite often was the orthopedic vet's assistant, so I would scrub into orthopedic surgeries and help with that, which was very cool. I got to see some pretty cool surgeries very close up, as long as you've got a strong stomach. There's a lot of blood involved in that, but I found it very, very interesting. So I am very lucky that my experience was so hands-on. I learned a lot of skills that I'm incredibly proud of, and I guess that's probably one of the biggest things I love about the job is the skills that you get. So after a little while, I changed my hours and things like that, and I worked mainly weekends, and then I moved on to being a hospital nurse. So that is where, you know, you're in charge of the patients that are in hospital for that day. There might be 2, there might be 15, you just never know, and that can be anything from patients recovering from surgery, you know, orthopedics, or even the patients from that day that are waking up from their surgery. It can be illnesses, injuries, anything, honestly. Anything where the patient has to be admitted, you know, ticks, snake bites, all of that kind of thing as well. So you do need quite a bit of experience to do that, and I have to say that was my favourite part of the job. That is what I love the most. I love being a hospital nurse. It is definitely the most hands-on with the patient when they're conscious. You know, in surgery, they're asleep. You don't get to bond with them as much. In hospital, you really get to know that pet and you bond with them, and that is absolutely my favourite role as a vet nurse, to be a hospital nurse. So it's pretty full on as well. What we would do at the start of each day as a hospital nurse is you would sit down with the vet, you would go through the treatment plan for the day, but then the vet is in surgery, the vet's doing consults, they're quite busy. So you're sort of in charge of giving the patient their medication for the day, monitoring them, checking their vital signs, checking, you know, for pain and things like that, taking them for walks, feeding them, all kinds of things. And yeah, it's definitely more hands-on, and I love that. There are other roles as well. I didn't do too much of this except, I did a little bit, but not as much as surgery and hospital. So we also have a consult nurse as well, and they assist the vet with consults. So they are going into the consults, they'll get a bit of information first. Because something that I guess a lot of people might not know is that the vets are incredibly busy. They are being pulled in 8 different directions. You know, a vet in one day might be doing surgery and have 8 hospital patients and have 6 hours worth of consults as well. You know, they are under the pump all the time. So as nurses, we need to help them as much as possible, which is why these days we do a lot more. So we would go into a consult, we would take the information, take some of the vital signs, get a history of that patient, sometimes even take samples of their skin, prepare them so that the vet can look at them under the microscope, just to really help out as much as we possibly can. And then as well, you know, there's the obvious thing of reception. So often you are at the front greeting people, answering phones, answering questions, yeah, everything like that. And sometimes you do it all. You know, often if you're working a weekend, there would only be one nurse on and one vet, so you do everything. So there are a lot of different roles you can get into as a vet nurse. It just depends on the clinic and how big they are. And I guess if you're able to do all of those roles, or if they sort of hire you specifically for one role. So that's sort of what I used to do every day as a vet nurse. Now I wanted to talk about the pros and the cons. I think a lot of people, it's funny, you either get the extremes, so you get the people that are like, oh man, I could never do your job, you know, I could never do this, or I could never do that, I don't know how you handle it. And then there are the other people who are like, oh, you just get to play with puppies and kittens all day. Drives you crazy. I'm gonna start with the cons. The cons of being a vet nurse. Right. The pay is probably one of the biggest things, because that definitely affects how you handle everything else. The number of times I've had someone say to me or scream at me or abuse me and say, you know, you're in it just for the money, you people only care about the money, if my dog dies, it's your fault, just simply by asking someone to pay a bill. We do not make money, and I have no issue whatsoever talking about finance, and what I get paid. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I got paid as a vet nurse. So as I mentioned, I did a traineeship when I was in year 12. When I was doing that traineeship, I was on $15.13 an hour. That's pretty good when you're in year 12, you know, that's not that bad. When I then finished school and I was working full time, I went up to, I think, $15.34 an hour. That's what I was on. And I was probably on, well, actually I was on that for 3 years. So my first 3 years as a nurse, you know, I had quite a bit of experience by that point, but I stayed on that rate. There was no pay rises, there was no increases, nothing. When I then left that practice and went to the larger practice, I got a bit of a pay raise, and I was on $16.50 an hour. So I had 3 years of experience and I was on $16.50 an hour. There was a point, probably about, I would say 2 years into working in that practice, where I mentally was in the worst state I've ever been in. I'm someone who, I work quite well under pressure and stress. I don't really get much anxiety, things like that. You know, I handle stress quite well, but I was at breaking point. There were days when I would wake up in the morning and I would think that, you know, if I got in a car accident on the way to work today, I didn't want to die, but if I was just like injured a little bit, you know, or bad enough that I didn't have to go into work, then that was a good thing. And that is not healthy in any way, shape or form. It was impacting everything in my life, my attitude, how I worked, how I was to work with, just everything. I was a very angry person, to the point that I actually had to take up martial arts, because I was so angry that I was not starting fights, but I was definitely going looking for fights on weekends, like when I was out with friends and stuff. So I was a very, very angry person. Anyway, and obviously that came through in my work as well. So my boss pulled me aside, he said, you know, we don't want to lose you, so we want to take some of the stress off you and we're going to give you a pay raise. So I got a pay raise to $17.50 an hour. So after being out of school and having a lot of experience, after 5 years, I was on $17.50 an hour. Now you're on a salary, there is no such thing as overtime, no such thing as toil, and it's not like a 9-to-5 job where you might have an event or something on, and so, you know, I've got to do half an hour overtime or an hour's overtime, you know, this day or this week, just because things are busy. You rarely got out on time. So there were weeks when you could be doing 60, 65, 70 hours a week. It didn't matter. You didn't get lunch breaks. And you know, you're doing that for $17.50 an hour. So the pay is shit. So at the maximum amount I ever got paid as a vet nurse, so this was with 8 years of experience, I was on about $24 or $25 an hour, and that was because I'd taken on weekend work. So I worked permanent weekends, so that I could get a higher pay rate. So that is what we earn. You can have a decade of experience and be on $25 an hour, working under some of the most extreme conditions you can imagine. So we don't do it for the pay. We definitely do not do it for the pay. Vets, honestly, are not that much different. I mean, I know vets with a decade of experience that are working for like $80,000 or $90,000. And to some people that sounds like a lot, but these people have gone to university. You know, it can be an OP of 1 to even get into, veterinary science. Then they have to work their asses off. They have to learn so much. It's not just one human system they have to learn. It's cats, it's dogs, it's birds, it's everything. They have to be a radiologist, they have to be an ultrasonographer, they have to be a surgeon, a GP, everything. And with all that experience, and they're making like $80,000 or $90,000 a year compared to, I mean, I don't want to put any other profession down, but compared to something where you might have no experience and you can be on $80K a year. So for how hard they work and what they have to do, the vets don't get paid anywhere near what they should either. So honestly, the money is not coming to us. The pay is very bad. Don't do it for the pay. Obviously we do it because we love it. Okay, so on that topic, the hours as well. The hours are crazy. As I mentioned, there's a lot of overtime. You can't make plans after work because you just never know when you're going to finish. You could be about to finish and you've got your bags packed and you're walking out the door and suddenly a dog that's been hit by a car comes in and that's it. Your plans are out the window. You need help. Like, what are you going to do? You can't walk away from that type of thing. So there were nights when, you're meant to finish at 4 p.m. and you're there at 11 o'clock at night doing a cesarean on a dog because what else are you going to do? You can't let that dog go untreated. There's no one else to do it. You stay back. So the hours aren't great either. The pay's not good. There's a lot of abuse, honestly, you do. People are very angry, they're upset, there's a lot of emotion involved, so you do get abused quite a lot as well. You sort of just learn to live with it. It's just part of the job, I guess, that you get that in any job. There is also a danger as well. So this is probably something that I think a lot of people don't think about. You are risking your life sometimes. Or, okay, maybe that's a bit extreme. Maybe not your life, but your limbs, your mobility, your face. I know a lot of vets and nurses who have had to have reconstructive surgery because they've been attacked by animals. It's not a joke. I can't tell you how many owners I've had laugh like, oh, Fluffy always bites. It's not funny. These are permanent injuries that we have to live with. I've been bitten once quite badly and it was enough to really shake me. And I have to say that my attitude towards animals and dogs did change that day. I was less trusting. You obviously learn a lot more about behavior and how to read behavior and things like that, but we can't always do that. I know I certainly couldn't in the situation I was in. It was an incredibly unpredictable dog. And he put his canine tooth through my thumb, but honestly that was quite mild. He could have taken my hand off. So it is dangerous. There are situations that are quite scary to get into, so you really have to know what you're doing. You have to be confident in what you're doing, or fake it till you make it. So there is that aspect as well. The stress and the emotional toll, obviously. This is one though that I do think people probably don't understand, or they have a different opinion on it, I guess. So I get people say to me all the time, oh, I could never put an animal to sleep. That's so hard. I don't know how you do that. I couldn't cope with that. Honestly, euthanasia is not the hardest part of the job. It's very humane. It's a very peaceful way to go. In most circumstances, it's what's best for the animal. So therefore, it's the right thing to do. And even in situations where, an animal's having to be put to sleep because of money or something like that, I'd rather see an animal put to sleep than go without treatment. That is the hardest part. seeing an animal go without treatment is by far the absolute hardest thing about the job. It's very sad when you put an animal to sleep, but it's peaceful. They're at peace, they're not in pain anymore. When you have to watch an animal suffer because the owner refuses treatment or can't afford treatment or just isn't aware of what's happening and how bad their animal is, that is crippling sometimes, you know, that is heartbreaking. It just shatters you to see that. And sometimes you can help and sometimes you can't, you know, sometimes it's out of your control, and that by far is the absolute hardest thing about the veterinary industry, is seeing animals you want to help and you can't. There's obviously just the emotional toll in general. And this is something that I think every person in the industry is aware of, but people maybe outside don't know about. The veterinary industry has the highest rate of suicide. And, you know, unfortunately, almost everyone in the industry has been in a situation where someone they know or someone that they've worked with has taken their life. And that's because there is a huge amount of pressure and stress and emotion involved from every aspect, you know, whether it's making money for the clinic or whether it's the abuse or emotion that you see from the owners, the abuse that you see with the animals, the time pressure. You constantly feel like you're under pressure from time, and that really does take a toll emotionally. As I mentioned, I myself got into a very bad situation where I just wasn't handling it. I really hated work and I needed a break. And I actually did take a break. I went back to part-time work and I went off and studied personal training and things like that. And I really needed that. I would have crashed and burned without that. I would have left the industry and I never would have come back. So it doesn't matter how strong you are. It doesn't matter how well you cope with stress and emotion and all of that. It is overwhelming at times. It absolutely is overwhelming, and people need to be aware of that, because I do think that it doesn't matter where you are, who you work for, at some point it will become very emotional. So if you don't think you can cope with that, then I would say it's not the profession for you. Okay, so I'll move on to the pros. So the pros, well, one of the biggest pros is you practically get to go to work in your pajamas. So if anyone has ever seen scrubs, like they, you know, wear on all the medical shows, they feel like pajamas. So one, you get to work in pajamas, big win. Two, low maintenance. Honestly, the animals don't give a shit what you look like. So, you know, I'm not the type of person to dress up fancy and put a lot of effort in each day, quite lazy. So for me, I loved how low maintenance it was. I guess the absolute best thing about the job is saving lives. That is why we're all there. Everyone who gets into the veterinary industry, they're there for the animals. We're not there for the pay. We're not there for the hours. We're not there for the glory. Like, you're often covered in shit and piss and vomit, and it's not glamorous in any way, shape or form. So the whole reason we do it is for the animals. We love the animals. We're there for them. And I've talked a lot about the cons and the bad side of it, and there's probably going to be more cons that I talk about. But to be honest, most days you forget all of that when you see a patient that you've been nursing go back to the owners. So the best feeling in the world, the best thing I've ever felt in my life is when you have an animal that comes in and they're so critical, they're so sick, you know, they're dead or dying, and you revive them, you bring them back, you save them, you nurse them, you bond with them, and then you're able to send that pet home to the owners and to see the owner's face when their baby, their loved one, you know, their world, when you can send that pet home to them, it is just like beyond anything I can describe. And you know, I've been on the other side of that as well. I've been in a couple of situations where I've had very, very sick pets, and any of you that have been in that situation can understand how incredibly thankful you are that you know, your pet survived that. And for us, for the nurses, for the vets, for the team behind the scenes, that is the whole reason we do this job. That is absolutely why we wake up every day, why we come to work, why we put up with the stress, why we put up with the shitty pay, the shitty hours. We are absolutely there for the pets. We're there to save lives. Like, that's what we want to do. So that, hands down, is the absolute best thing about the job. Makes you forget all the bad situations and the bad days and things like that. The other thing that I love and I'm incredibly proud of, you know, anytime I say to someone I'm a vet nurse, I am so proud to say that, because the skills that I've learned as a nurse and generally as well, I think are something that has really pushed me in life. So I have learned to deal with incredibly difficult situations, to work well under pressure, to work in a team, to, I guess, want to be better, to be the best that I can. That's, you know, all what I've learned from being a vet nurse. I love that I've been able to be so hands-on in my role as well, you know, monitoring patients through anesthetic, assisting with ultrasounds and x-rays and surgery and all of that kind of thing, you know, taking blood, putting catheters in, all of that hands-on stuff. I'm incredibly proud of the skills I have as a vet nurse, which is why I really like to talk about it, and I like to give people information about it, because it's something that I want people to know more about it. I want people to have those skills themselves. So I absolutely love that part of the job. The skills, not only good for nursing, but for anything you decide to do in life. It definitely teaches you great time management, communication skills, understanding people as well. You know, that comes with the abuse and the emotion. You get to understand, you know, I guess from other people's point of views, all of it, anyway, all that kind of thing. So yeah, so they're the pros and cons. Some of them, you know, there's absolutely a lot more, but I'll be here all day if I talk about that. Now I want to cover some of the questions that I get asked all of the time as well. So I've written a couple down. I'm going to keep it sort of brief, because again, I'll be here all day if I go right into depth with it. The number one question I get asked is, why is veterinary care so expensive? Right. Compare it to, at any point, no matter what it is, I want people to think about comparing it to the human industry if you didn't have Medicare, okay? Because we get no government funding. There is absolutely no government funding, no rebates, nothing like that. Vet clinics don't get any of that. So I want people to think about what you would have to pay if you didn't have Medicare. You know, if you go to a bulk bill doctor, you don't have to pay anything. But if you go to a doctor who does charge, you know, you can easily pay $80 for a consult. You might be there for 2 minutes to get a script, to get a repeat script, and you pay 80 bucks. If you need surgery and it's not covered by private health, or you can't go to a public system for it, it is astronomical. So I want people to realize that the veterinary industry and what we charge is unbelievably reduced. I can tell you now, and we have to reduce it because people just will not pay for it otherwise. We don't have Medicare. We do have pet insurance, but the last statistic I heard was that less than 5% of people have pet insurance. So as a whole, that is tiny. So there is only a very, very, very small percentage of people who don't have to think about the cost because it is covered by pet insurance. You know, the majority of people who don't have it, they do have to pay upfront costs. And it's a lot of money. I'm not denying it's a lot of money. I know it can be thousands of dollars for vet care, but in comparison to what we probably should charge and what you would be charged if you yourself would have that procedure at a hospital, it is unbelievably cheap, okay? So to give you a bit of a comparison, I myself, a couple of years ago, I had surgery. It was elective. It was a cosmetic procedure. I didn't need to have it done, therefore none of it's covered by Medicare or private health or any of that. But just to give you an understanding of the cost. So my surgery took 45 minutes. I was in and out of the hospital in 3 hours. And it cost me $11,000. My anaesthetist for that 45 minutes alone cost me $900. So that's a lot of money. Obviously it's something I chose to do, but I'm just giving you a comparison of what a surgery actually costs if you have to pay for it. Now, if your pet were to have, not a similar procedure, but a surgery that took 45 minutes, so let's say they got desexed. So if you had a female dog and they got desexed, that surgery is 100,000 times more complicated than the surgery I had done. It is a lot riskier. It's a routine surgery, but it is riskier. You know, there's big blood supply, all of that kind of thing. So it is, yeah, it is a full-on surgery. You would pay, and it can take, honestly, a female dog desexing, say they're like a 20-kilo dog, it could take, if you're really quick, if you've got a really quick surgeon, 30 minutes, maybe 45. If it's an older dog, or if it's a fatter dog, or it's a dog that's had puppies and things like that, it could take an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. You know, it's a big surgery. And we will charge you $250, $350, maybe $400 for that, okay? So your dog can have riskier, more full-on, complicated surgery that takes 2 hours, and it costs you like $400 compared to my 45-minute surgery that was quite simple, cost me $11,000. Okay, so what was the difference between those? Other than the actual procedure itself. I can tell you right now because I asked what drugs I was given. So the pre-med, the sedation I was given before surgery, was exactly what we use on people's pets. The anesthetic that I had during the procedure was exactly what we use on pets. The sutures that we used are the same that we use on pets. I had an anaesthetist. When your pet has surgery, they have a nurse with them. They have an anaesthetist with them the entire time. I had a nurse during recovery. Your pet also has a nurse during recovery. So in terms of what you're given and what you get and the drugs we use and the equipment and all that type of thing, they are the same. We use human grade drugs on your pets. The drugs that you get when you're going for surgery are the same as what we use on your pets. The cost difference is astronomical. So I just want you to keep that in mind next time your pet needs surgery and things like that. That yes, it is a lot of money, but in comparison to what it could be and what it would be if you were to have that procedure, it is the biggest bargain you'll ever get of your life. And you know, that's with any procedure as well. Again, recently I had to have a wisdom tooth out, had to go to a specialist because it was close to a nerve. I wasn't under anesthetic. The only drug I was given was a nerve block. I was awake in the chair. It took 30 seconds to take the tooth out, cost me $800. Your pet that has a dental procedure and has to have teeth removed, again, it could be $400, $500, $600, but that is a full anesthetic, sedation, post-operative pain relief, a nerve block. So we also give the nerve block. So again, it's the same treatment. Often there's a lot more treatment involved because we can't do things conscious, and yet the cost is minuscule compared to what you would pay if you were to pay for that surgery yourself. So that is, I guess, what I really want people to keep in mind. You know, I don't want to say veterinary care is cheap. It's not. You pay a lot of money, but that is because the equipment that we use, the drugs that we use, it is human grade equipment, and it is unbelievably expensive. You know, the equipment, the surgery theaters, the staff, everything, you know, there are a lot of overheads. Veterinary clinics have huge overhead costs, and that is where the cost goes. That is where the money goes, and we have to charge those prices to cover that. Otherwise, vet clinics will go out of business, and a lot of veterinary businesses have gone out of business because of that, or they have to sell to big corporate businesses. When I first started nursing, there weren't many big corporate businesses. Now they're everywhere. They've taken over the market, and that's because they have the financial backing to support their clinics. Whereas standalone clinics that are owner run, they really struggle to cover costs at times, okay? And you know, we have to charge someone that, we have to ask you to pay your bills, or the clinics will go out of business and we won't be there to provide the veterinary care. So it's that simple. So I could talk about this all day because it really bugs me when people complain about the cost of veterinary care, okay? I've been on both sides, I've had astronomical bills myself. I've not always learned from my mistakes and got insurance, but I have now, and that is what you need to do, okay? If you are in a situation, well, actually no, not even if you're in a situation where you can't afford veterinary care. Any situation, any person, I don't care how much money you make, if you think you've got spare money or you think you would find the money if you had to, you have no idea how quickly a vet bill can go from $1,000 to $10,000, okay? If your pet gets sick, you have to understand that they can't tell us what's wrong. The only way we can find out what is wrong is through testing. And you know what? You don't always get an answer. Animals are very complicated to treat. They can't tell you where it hurts. They can't tell you what's wrong. They can't tell you that they ate rat bait yesterday. They can't tell you that they ate chicken from the bin that was off yesterday. You know, they can't tell you these things. So it is difficult and expensive and hard to diagnose pets. Therefore, if your pet gets sick, it can be very expensive. If you have pet insurance, it takes a huge load off that. So a lot of pet insurances will cover, I think at minimum, like $8,000 to $9,000 a year. And then you can get increased cover where they might cover like $10,000 to $15,000. And a lot of people think like, oh, you know, it would never get that expensive, or I would never pay that much. I can tell you now, when your pet is sick and they are dying, you will pay it. You will pay it. You will find a way to pay it. And that is incredibly stressful as well if you don't have the money. So by having pet insurance, you don't have to think twice. You don't have to think like, shit, am I gonna have to sell the car? Am I gonna have to pull money out of the mortgage? You know, all of that kind of thing as well. I only have this much if we get to that price and they're not better, then we have to stop treatment. If you have pet insurance, it takes a huge amount of stress and pressure off you because you know that you're covered for $8,000. So you can say to the vet clinic, go for it, got $8,000. It takes that pressure off thinking, can we or can we can't afford it, you know? So learn from my mistakes. Twice now, I didn't learn the first time, I've learned the second time, have had very high vet bills. And we're not talking like 1,000 or 2,000, we're talking like house deposit big. So you think it will never happen to you. And I mean, I've got indoor cats. Like I thought, what can go wrong? They're indoors. Trust me, they'll find a way. They will find a way, and it can get very expensive very quickly. So please get pet insurance. If there's anything you take away from today, it is get pet insurance for your pet. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, no, I don't need pet insurance. And literally we had one client who said they declined free pet insurance for their puppy. They got 1 month for free that kicked in automatically. They took the puppy home from the vet clinic visit and ran it over with the car. Accidentally, obviously. It cost them thousands and thousands of dollars. They could have had free insurance and it would have been covered. You never know what is going to happen to your pet. They are so stupid at times. They eat rocks, they do stupid shit. They run in front of cars. Like, you cannot predict what is going to happen to them, so please get pet insurance. As for what type of pet insurance or what company to go with, there's only really 2 companies that I've had much to do with, and that is Pet Plan and Bow Wow Pet Insurance. So I have insured my cats through Bow Wow. Unfortunately, Boss, our dog, he was too old. So again, insure your pets when they're young. Get them on pet insurance because then pre-existing, like you won't have any pre-existing conditions. Everything will be covered and there won't be any age limits and things like that. So get them insured the moment you get them. And research your pet insurance because it all depends what you need. It depends what breed you have, what species you have, cat, dog, what you need covered. You have to read the terms and conditions. Make sure that your insurance company will cover anything that happens after you insure with them. So if they've got a pre-existing condition, if they've had surgery on their leg, then their legs aren't going to be covered. But make sure that, you know, dogs are quite prone to obstructions. So say, you know, make sure your pet insurance covers obstructions, and make sure they continue to cover it. Make sure that they don't exclude it once you've claimed for it. That is the biggest thing I can recommend. Read the fine print. I read the fine print front to back to make sure that it covered everything that I needed. That was specifically for cats with Bow Wow. So perhaps, and you know, indoor cats, I'm talking about indoor cats. So yeah, you have to read it yourself. I'm more than happy to answer questions if people have specific questions about it, but honestly, you need to talk to the companies, you need to talk to them. That's what I would recommend. If you have questions, call that company and ask them directly to clarify things and what is covered and what's not. I would say bare minimum, I wouldn't bother insuring them if it didn't cover $8,000 a year. Anything lower than that, you'll rack up quite quickly. Like there are some pet insurances that are very cheap, but they might only cover like $500 a year, and that is bullshit. Like, don't even bother. Don't waste your money. $500 will go in the blink of an eye. So cover them for at least $8,000, if not more. That would be my recommendation. Okay. Choosing a breed, or people asking me, I get asked this so often. Again, this is probably the second most popular question I get asked is, you know, what breed of dog should I get? Or I'm thinking about getting this breed of dog. Is that a good breed of dog? If you ask me this question, I'm probably going to crush your dreams, because I can find something bad about every single breed. Okay? So when you are choosing a breed, I mean, I think everyone knows this or know that they should do this, but I just wanted to expand on it a little bit. You have to do your research. Like, you wouldn't buy a house without looking at the area, seeing if it's close to things that, you know, you like. Is it close to the beach? Is it close to the shops? Can you walk to a cafe? Like, all of those type of things that suit your lifestyle. You wouldn't buy a house if it was 2-bedroom if you had 4 kids. Like, there are all these things, you know, you wouldn't buy a house without researching it first and looking into it. Don't get a pet without researching it. I think people just think, oh, you know, they've had a pet before that was really easy. Every single animal is different. Every single breed is different. You could have had 4 dogs of the same breed that had similar personalities, and then the next one you get is completely different, okay? You need to do your research on the breed, and even then speak to, don't want to recommend breeders in this, but if you are purchasing a pet off someone and you have the chance to meet that pet's parents, do it, because you can see their temperament, talk to the owners, get as much information about that animal, about that breed as possible, okay? There are, I think, a lot of trends with dogs. In particular, I would say cats a little bit too, but probably more so dogs. And I think social media and all of that type of thing can glamorize certain breeds, and I definitely think that's an issue, because people are buying into those breeds, seeing how, again, it's like people's Instagram, you know, it's a highlight reel. They don't see what goes on behind the scenes, and they don't know enough about that breed. So I'll give you some examples. I'm probably going to offend some people here, but whatever. When I first started nursing, the trend at that time was, or probably just before I started nursing. Anyway, the trend was Shar-Peis, because of that stupid toilet paper ad with the cute little rolly dog. Shar-Peis actually don't have the nicest temperament. They're quite aggressive. They were used for dog fighting. They're not the nicest dogs personality-wise. In general, obviously there are exceptions. They have horrendous skin conditions because of all those rolls. Like, we've had to do facelifts, I'm not kidding, on dogs, specialist surgery, all of that kind of thing on the breed. That's something that people don't know. They just see a cute dog and they buy it. The next trend after that was blue staffies. They're pretty hardy dogs, I have to say. I don't have anything against blue staffies, or staffies in general, but again, they've got massive separation anxiety a lot of the time, a lot of storm phobias. They're talkers, they're quite loud. I think people just pay too much money for them, but generally, like, they're quite a good dog, especially around kids. They're quite hardy and tough, and if they're well socialized, they can be lovely. If they get into a dog fight, they can be deadly, and they're high energy as well. Next trend after that, I would say probably bulldogs. Yeah. Okay, I've seen, I guess, and maybe people aren't aware of this, the majority of bulldogs I have seen do not reproduce naturally. They can't mate naturally, they really struggle during pregnancy, and they cannot give birth naturally. Okay, so just think about that for a second. There is a reason for that. They have a lot of back issues, they have a lot of hip issues, they obviously have breathing issues because they're brachycephalic, so they've got a squishy face, their airways are not great. So there are a huge range of problems these dogs can have, literally from the moment they're conceived. And yeah, I think people weren't aware of that. You know, they would pay $3,500 for a dog and then realize that it needs $6,000 worth of surgery and not want to pay it. And a lot of issues with that. The next trend after that was French bulldogs, mildly better, still have a lot of the same issues. And again, I feel like that's where Instagram really played part of that, of sort of glamorizing that breed. The current trend, and once I mention this, honestly, pay attention to this because you'll start to notice it too, is sausage dogs, dash hounds. They're everywhere at the moment. And you know, I agree, they're unbelievably cute. A lot of them need spinal surgery. You know, the reason they're cute is because they're so long and they've got such short little cute legs. Genetically, that's not great. I've seen one recently on my Facebook feed and it needed spinal surgery, and I think it cost them, well, the last one they posted was about $6,000, and it was still going upwards from there. So, you know, there are a lot of breeds that get glamorized on social media and things like that, that people then think, oh God, they're so cute, and they buy these dogs for the aesthetics because they're cute, and they are cute as puppies, there's no denying that. But you have to look into these breeds. Their temperament, the conditions they're prone to can be astronomically expensive. And if you accept those costs, if you are aware of them, and these are things that you might have to change your life for as well. I'm talking about people have had to like make alterations to their house for some of these pets so that they can like get in the front door or climb the front steps, or, you know, yeah, there's a lot of things that you need to change. So you need to know that they're suitable for you. If they are, if you're willing to accept that and the responsibilities that come with it, fantastic, good on you. That's your choice. The problem comes when people aren't. You know, they see these cute animals online, or their friend's got a cute one and they've had no issues. And you know what? That person is incredibly lucky. You may not have the same luck. You have to accept, I mean, any animal can be expensive. Any animal. I have a domestic cat that has cost me a lot of money, like, yeah, a lot of money, you know, and they're just a domestic nothing. But there are definitely breeds that are more prone to issues, or the issues that they have can be more complicated. Even, you know, temperament, their agility, their cardiovascular capabilities, these are all things you have to think about when you get a pet. If you want a dog that is going to go on a run for you, there are definitely breeds that you should not get. Do not get a bulldog. Do not get anything that has breathing issues. If you want a super lazy dog that's just going to sit there, or, you know, if your parents who are retired want a dog, don't get them a Labrador. Like, don't get them a working breed. You know, these are things that you need to look into. You need to do your research, because it is not fair on the animal. It's, you think you suffer, but it's the animal who suffers. You know, if you have a dog that needs a lot of mental stimulation and things like that, you might complain and be like, oh, they bark so much, I can't stand them. And so many dogs get rehomed because they do bark. That's because that dog is bored, because you have taken them on and not given them what they need. You need to stop thinking about what you need and what you want, what you think is cute, and you have to think about what suits your lifestyle. What animal is going to suit your lifestyle? Are you willing to change your lifestyle? Yes or no? What sacrifices are you willing to make? Because with any pet, any single animal you get, you will have to make sacrifices, whether it be changing your routine, changing your house, changing your finances. You know, they're going to cost you money no matter what. So these are all things you need to think about. What breed would I recommend? Like any crossbreed, again, you know, any animal can have issues. There is absolutely no guarantee that your animal won't have issues, but there are certainly breeds that are more prone to skin conditions or heart conditions or joint problems and all of that type of thing as well. So think about what you want, what you need, because every person is going to be different. I could recommend one breed for someone else who I would never in a million years recommend for someone else. If there was like one overall breed I would recommend, it's greyhounds, because I just love them so much. They are again, this is what I mean with misconceptions. You know, people often think because they're racing dogs, they're bred for racing, it's what they do, they're incredibly good at it, that they're high maintenance dogs that you've got to walk constantly and you need a lot of exercise. Greyhounds are the laziest dogs in the world. If you've got a grandparent or retired parents and they want like a really chilled out dog, get them a greyhound. They're so lazy, and that's the thing, people don't understand them. You know, they might have different ideas in their head, so that's what I mean. You can't just go off what people say or experiences that you or someone else has had. You have to do as much research as possible. Think about the temperament, the conditions that they're prone to, how they get along with other animals, what exercise they need, the coats even as well, like where do you live? Do you live in Queensland? Should you get a double-coated dog? Probably not. All of that type of thing as well. Because if you don't think about that and you go ahead and you buy a dog because you've seen it on social media and it's so cute, or your friend's got one and it's cute, you are going to have issues. At some point, you will have issues with it. So, and that's not fair on the animal. You've made the decision to go out and buy that without any research, so that's on you, but you are making that animal suffer if you don't give them what they need. Okay, so that's that. Now that can also go for species as well. So I have people say to me all the time, now I am a crazy cat lady through and through. I've got 3 cats and I've got Boss as well, but I just love cats so much. So people often say to me, you know, how do I keep my cats off the kitchen bench? You don't. I have no idea. I have no idea how to keep the cats off the kitchen bench. Or like, how do I stop the cat from ruining the furniture? Well, I've got no fucking clue, because mine have destroyed everything I own. So these are things you need to think about as well. Like, I will happily sacrifice my couches because I love cats so much and they bring me so much joy and they're just beautiful and I love them. But if you are someone who takes a huge amount of pride in your home and you've got a $4,000 couch and you don't want fur everywhere and you don't want your animals on the kitchen bench, then don't get a cat. You know, these are things you need to think about as well. It's not even just the breed, it's the species too. If you want, if you don't want footprints all through your house and a messy home and slobber and someone who hassles you when you're eating, don't get a dog. Like, these are things that you need to think about as well before you go out and buy it. It's not just a breed, it can be species as well. You know, if you want something that's low maintenance, that's going to cost you little to no money, then don't get a pet. Just don't. You know, there are going to be issues with any animal you buy. There's going to be costs involved with any animals you buy. It's whether you are willing to accept those or not. Okay. So I'm going to finish today with the best piece of advice, the best overall piece of advice I could give anyone. Do your research before doing anything, okay? Owning a pet it's a privilege. It's something you should have to earn. When you get a pet, they are completely and absolutely reliant on you. You have to provide them with everything that they need, and animals need exactly what humans do. You know, we have people often say, you know, you might say to them, oh, your dog needs a dental, and they'll tell you, oh, I had a dog for 15 years and he never had a dental before. That's simply because you weren't made aware of how bad his teeth were. There's a chance your dog died of dental disease and you're just not aware of it. So, you know, you have to think in terms of what do I need as a person? What do my children need? Your pet needs the exact same things. You know, they need exercise, they need mental stimulation, they need a nutritious diet, they need love and affection and all those kinds of things as well. That's any animal, doesn't matter what breed, what age, what species, anything like that. That's what they all need. So you have to put their needs above your preference. You have to realize that they are dependent completely on you and you need to provide them with everything. That is the best advice I can give to anyone, is to think of your animal as if it were you, as if it were your child. You know, what do you need? Do you need regular medical checkups? Do you need a nutritious, balanced diet? Do you need, you know, all of those extra things? Your pet needs the same thing, okay? For some reason, people don't see that their pet's needs are the same as theirs, and they are. They need all the same care that we do, if not more so, because they're not capable of preventative measures and things like that that we are. You know, we brush our teeth every day. They don't brush their teeth every day. Therefore, they need dental care. We work for 8 hours a day. We might be on our feet all day. Therefore, we might not need exercise when we get home. They do. You know, there are all these things that you need to consider about what they need and compare it to what you need in life. Can you give that to them? Yes or no? If you can't, then don't own a pet. It's that simple. So that's the best advice all over I can give, is that treat your pet as if it was a human. What care would you give your kids? What care would you give yourself? They need the exact same thing. Okay? Right, so thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it shed a little bit of light on, you know, pet care and veterinary industry. I know I only sort of briefly touched on things, but otherwise I'd be here all day. So if you have any more questions, please let me know. You can comment below or contact me directly. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, sorry, it's not for everyone. I know I might have offended people, but again, this is very much my opinion from my experience. So there you go. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I will see you next time.